For me, the most interesting part of the forge is its location and its links with the Port of Spalding. Because of its uniqueness, that is probably it's very interesting as a forge. Of course, in its early days, would have been very much linked with the port and actually repairing the parts on the ship that used to use the port. The original building probably had a hole to the back of the forge, which enabled the chains from the boats to come into the forge to be actually mended, for work to be able to be done. There's a hoist that would probably took items from the boats so that the work could be carried out in the forge. We have the 1850 and 1860 account books. The blacksmith at that time was a Mr. Fisher. In his books he records the name of each of the boats that he did work for and each of the captains that actually manned those boats. So it's a wonderful record of what Spalding's port was like, the like of which no one else has in the town. So just from that standpoint, we must preserve it. The Chambridge Forge got its name from a bridge that went across the river and that was sited to the left of the forge as you look at it, and it took foot passengers across the river. It had two wooden sections that came in from each side of the bank, and in the central section to it there were two sections which opened like doors, I think is probably the best way of describing it, and they opened on chains so that boats could flow to the port itself. It's first recorded in 1732 with Grundy's map of the time, which has a picture of it and actually has a location for it. So the forge itself isn't on the map, but it's believed that there was an earlier variant of it, because we can see foundations that show that there was an earlier building, and that was by the side of the bridge, and therefore the close linkage with Chambridge Forge and its bridge was the reason why it was called Chambridge. By 1844 we think that the boats that were using the port by then were getting larger and larger, and there were several incidents where boats had actually collided with the bridge, and in colliding with the bridge they had actually caused damage to it. So 1844 the bridge was knocked down, and another bridge, which was called Albert Bridge, to the right of the forge, and that was a swing bridge where the whole section of the bridge swung open to allow ships to go up to the port. So a lot larger ships could go in, and boats could go in to the central part of the town of Spalding. We haven't found anyone earlier than Joseph Rose yet, but Joseph Rose is the first blacksmith, and that was the late 1700s, and then that was then transferred to a Francis South, and then from a Francis South to an Edward Fisher, and then in 1898 then that was built by the Dodd family, and 3 generations of Dodds have worked the forge for that period of time.
My grandfather was the 6th son of a middling-sized farmer in South Kyme Fen. One of the boys actually took the farm, and the others went as apprentices or into other work. My grandfather he went as an apprentice to a blacksmith in Swinesard, which would be 5 or 6 miles away. So I imagine he would be in lodgings. At the end of his apprenticeship, he went as a journeyman to Newmarket, plating racehorses, which was very well paid then, as it is now, simply in order to put together enough capital to set himself up in business. And by 1898 he'd be 30 then, I should think, and had married and had by then one daughter. he came to Spalding and bought the business here.
The forge itself has changed very little. If we look at the 1898 inventory, when Jeff Dodd's grandfather bought the property originally, then most of those items are still within the forge, and you can see them there today. However, to make it friendly for visitors, we have made slight alterations to the building, and from a health and safety point of view, it's safe for visitors to come in and watch the blacksmith at work. We've also made changes where originally the blacksmith would have had a small boy that actually jumped up and down on the bellows to make them work, but that now has stopped, and we still have the bellows, but we don't have the small boys to jump up and down, and therefore we have put an electric fan in with an electronic control that actually controls the volume of air that goes through the hearth and heats the metal up. But largely the building is as it was when in 1898, and the outside structure is largely as it was in about 1830, so it hasn't changed that much in that time.